podcast is to take. Rick and I are the hosts of the Cardano Effect podcast, and we really appreciate all of the viewers and listeners of the Cardano Effect podcast. Please consider hitting that subscribe button if you really want to help us out, boost our SEO, and share it when the episodes release. If you like what we're doing with our guests or our live stream episodes or whatever we're doing within the Cardano Effect podcast, we want to try to reach the broader crypto community, the broader Cardano community, and bring news and events and stories and continue the story of the Cardano blockchain. So we appreciate everyone. We have a nice team on the Cardano Effect podcast. It's in addition to Rick and myself, we have two people behind the scenes. We have Christian and Kyle. They really help us out to make this podcast as professional as possible. So thank you, Christian and Kyle. We have a lot of questions today, and we want to get right into the mix of things. It is International Women's Day, and our guest will be shortly announced from Rick. So without further ado, none of what we say on this podcast is financial advice. Remember, you are your best financial advisor, and if you don't think you are, you need to find someone who's qualified to do so. So without further ado, Rick, how are you doing today? What's going on? What's happening?
Hey, I'm doing great, Philippe. Thanks for asking. I appreciate it. I would like to give a shout out to the Cardano Foundation for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you all very much for your support. I would also like to remind any viewers new to this podcast that it's available on all major streaming platforms. So if you're driving in your car or working out, you can listen to the audio version of the podcast. Now, under our special guests, Tamara Hassan, IOHK Chief of Staff and Cardano Foundation Council member. Now, last time Tamara was on the Cardano Effect, it was on our episode with Ethiopia with many other people on. Now, this episode is dedicated to Tamara. Tamara, welcome. Thank you for coming on the podcast. How are you doing today? And where are you calling in from?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me. I am calling in today from London. We're here for a PwC workshop with a few groups here. We're here with the CF and Emergo, and really happy to be here.
There's a lot of people there. I noticed on crypto Twitter, there's a lot of people going to this event, so it must be a pretty big event.
It is a very big event for us, for the ecosystem, the three entities. Yeah, we've got a lot of good people here from each of the three entities. And it's going to be a long 3 days, but PwC, I was actually just with them, and they have an excellent schedule for us. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about this.
That's awesome. And your schedule's pretty busy because we had to chase you down to get you on a podcast.
Yeah, my schedule is crazy. Anybody that knows me at IOHK, and the CF knows that all I do is work, really. I love this project so much. And yeah, I stay busy. When you work for a remote company, you have to also, I have a lot of calls with people as well and make sure that everything is sort of moving along. So yeah, my calendar is crazy, but it's good. You got to stay busy.
Nice. Well, we had a lot of questions from our Reddit users. Yes. So, Philippe, did you want to start with the top of the list? Do you have it there?
Yes. So we're going to ask you about your role first at IOHK, sure. And you recently joined the Cardano Foundation. So can you explain exactly what your role is at IOHK and what your role at the foundation is, and what maybe your day in the life of Tamara?
Day in the life of me. Well, it's changed. My role at IOHK has changed a little bit since I joined. I've been here for 3 years now. So when I initially joined, I joined as, oddly, I came out of law school, actually. I've known Charles for over 5 years or 6 years. And I came out of law school. And he originally, he hired me as culture officer. So I started with a focus on culture at the organization, and then sort of moved into operations, HR. I became the HR director to sort of build that. I built that division of the company with my team. And now I'm chief of staff, which is, I have to say, guys, it's like the coolest role in the world. It's a role that was architected, I feel like, for me. Chief of staff, what the hell is that? I mean, it's different for different entities, right? So it's a really, for the government, it from like political things and from the military, of course, chief of staff. I was actually just at an event in Washington. I met the chief of staff for the Navy SEALs, and we actually had a session about what is a chief of staff. I'm now part of a chief of staff community. But it can be anything. It can go from like the not lowest level, but like an EA all the way up to an actual strategic advisor for the CEO and the executive team. So that's basically what my role is. It's so many different parts. I still oversee the people operations of the company, which includes and encompasses the culture of our organization. So I still make sure that, all of our operations are going. I come into different situations if, there are people issues, which we actually luckily don't have many, but I come in and help solve things whenever I'm needed and oversee most of our HR programs, with the help, of course, of our new HR director. But a lot of it is just like strategic planning with Charles. So I've built up a relationship with him over 3 years. It's one of those relationships that you sort of have to earn and gain. There's a joke inside IOHK. I'm the one that yells at Charles the most. I really do. When there's like Chico crypto fights or stuff, I'm the one like, Charles, just don't engage, man. Just don't do it. I say things to Charles that might have scarred him for life. I'm not sure, but I'm like the reasoning kind of person behind him. So I work really closely with Charles. We have a lot of meetings each week, and we strategize. So part of my job is working with Charles and strategizing about the direction that the company is heading. Another big part of it is project management. He sends me strategic projects, and I have to basically manage them cross-functionally across the organization. I also oversee all of our events and everything with Carrie and make sure that he's going to the right events that he should be going to, and not stuff that is just, Charles speaking at events that he's already spoken to or spoken at before, so to speak. I'm a gatekeeper for him. So basically everything sort of kind of comes through me too. I have to just make sure that when you have a CEO, he describes this as Lego blocks. When you have a CEO, you have to bring things to him or her, them, fully formed, at least give them a few ideas. So I kind of just make sure I look at presentations before they're presented to Charles, because I sort of, after working with him for so long, I sort of know what he wants to see. I know what irks him a little bit. I know what irks me as well. It's funny with presentations, people always make the same mistakes with Charles. So I'm sort of like a gatekeeper to him as well. And I travel a lot with him too, to conferences. I do business development with him and for him. So I get involved in that. So it's a really all-encompassing role. It truly is the coolest job I've ever had. So that's what I do there, and also budgeting and planning for the company. And then at the CF, so the Cardano Foundation, I joined it because I wanted to, like, this is our baby, right? We've created, it's a very maternal thing to say. Again, female archetypes, right? So immediately I'm like, well, this is our baby. I have to make sure that I'm like, we're handing our baby over to an organization that is set up for success, and that we have the right people in place that can handle it and that can take that over. Moreover, I wanted to make sure that we had the right governing structure for the Cardano Foundation. I mean, there's a council and then there's an operating body, and that operating body can be so many different things. So I just wanted to make sure that we looked at the governing structure, make sure that it's sound, make sure that it's, basically prepared to bring in some heavy hitters from the industry. I have a few people in mind that I want to bring in on the council that I cannot mention right now. But basically, I've come in to sort of prepare the grounds for that, to help prepare the grounds for that. Also to push a strategy. I don't know if you guys saw my other interview with Bakit, but I'm pretty sure I said like it 9 times. I'm like, I'm a planner, man. I like plans. I like strategies. You can be agile, yeah, in your strategy, but you also need to have a strategy. And that's actually the point of this workshop. So I work with Jerry and Nathan and Domino, and we actually drove this workshop, which basically the PwC workshop, the outcome of it is a consolidated sort of commercial strategy between the 3 entities, right? So as you guys know, I mean, each of our entities has a specific business activity. In the Cardano Foundation's case, it's more of a custodian and a compliance activity and an enabling activity. So the 3 entities need to be on the same page. They need to execute in their own swim lanes, right? But they still need to have one, overarching. It's like everything. If you look at a strategy, you always have to have the same mission and values and all of that stuff, and sing from the same hymn sheet, as the Irish people would say, which I think is super cute. So we all are singing from the same hymn sheet now after this workshop. Not that we weren't before, but this is just, it's really going to, make things all come together. So, and I look at hiring for the Cardano Foundation. I'm really actively involved in hiring for the CEO. After working for IOHK for so long, and in my previous roles in other companies, I sort of have a niche, or a knack, I should say, or of who to hire and where and why. And it's a very specific kind of company and environment. So I'm actively involved in hiring all the new roles for the Cardano Foundation as well. So that's what I do.
Okay. That's awesome.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's
That's a
fun.
lot.
When's your downtime? When do you have downtime? Is this a 7-day work week?
I am not going to lie. I work a lot. So on the weekends, I actually read a lot because I also want to get technically up to speed. Not that I don't have a technical background per se. I have a law degree. You know, I was an audio engineer. That doesn't really count. It does a little bit. So no, I don't have a lot of downtime, but that's, this is one of the things, like everybody, they can get down on you and they'd be like, well, you work too much. It's like, no, that's just how I function. I always have. I come from a family that works a lot and I just love it. I mean, this doesn't feel like working. So no, I don't have downtime, but I get to go to cool places. So that I guess feels a little bit like vacation. And I watch a lot of, Netflix when I have downtime.
Okay. Sounds good.
Netflix
Sounds good.
binges.
Yeah,
It does
sounds
sound good though.
pathetic.
I mean, you're looking at the people. You're looking at the people and what the people are doing.
Yeah,
You don't need to be looking. Not everyone doesn't need to be looking at the code. You don't need
that's right.
all coder
Good
managers,
point.
but you do need managers who understand people and processes. I noticed you mentioned archetypes. I'm a big fan of looking at archetypes and how systematic processes work. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you're looking at that level of information. So
Yeah.
how did you end up at IOHK? Like, how did Charles find you? Did you come across them? Tell us a little bit of
Yeah.
story about that. How did you end up at IOHK?
That's a good question. So I mean, I was involved when Ethereum was being born, right? At Decentral, I forget even what year that is. So that's when Charles and I met. I worked on some other project, and that's when I met Charles. Actually, he had this thing called the Hoskinson Doctrine, of which I thought was the most amazing thing in the world. It was just this document on, well, basically what we're building here too. So we met back in the day. And yeah, we just kept in touch. He's actually the reason I'm still in the space. I got to admit, guys, like I was one of the first females, oddly enough, in the space. I mean, it truly used to be me, like this blaze of red hair amongst all these like boys, guys, men. Some are boys, some are men, in a room. So I actually used to be one of the only women at these meetups. But so I probably stood out a little bit. And Charles and I, yeah, we met back in the day. I used to be, I used to have an accelerator, an incubator accelerator called Incubes. And he met me and he met my partner through that. And yeah, so he just kept in touch over the years. And actually, he was one of the reasons why I went to law school. I remember asking him. I went to law school later in life, so in my 30s. I won't tell you how old I am. I'm not in my 40s, but I went to law school a little bit later in life because during my 20s, I didn't feel compelled to go to law school. It's like, well, what's the point? What am I fighting here? What's like, I always wanted to change the system, but I didn't have a reason to really like love the law or care about the law. So this space really compelled me to want to go to law school. And I was like, well, because I just wanted to help, right? I wanted to help make sure that, where that sort of rubber meets the road and that like similar to what Caitlin Long's doing, like I wanted to make sure that I could help in some positive way, help our industry thrive. So he actually convinced me to go to law school, him and many other people. So yeah, that. And then actually in the middle of law school, him and Jeremy called me because I was very interested in decentralized autonomous organizations. And they called me and they said, would you like to lead or join or do something? I'm like, no, dudes, I'm in law school. It's kind of hard, kind of busy right now, doing that. But after that, I worked for Don Tapscott. I did some research for him. And then Charles, yeah, him and Jeremy called me and were like, we want you to join. And honestly, to my parents, dismay, because they wanted me to be a lawyer, like an actual lawyer, I chose this. And I have never regretted it, not for one day. I'm not a practicing lawyer. And to be honest, there are much better lawyers out there than me, but it's good to actually understand the law. And that's how it was. Yeah. So I joined after law school.
That's amazing. Amazing. I wanted to do a follow-up question. Let's talk a little bit about gender diversity. You mentioned you were
Yeah.
one of the first women involved with the Ethereum project, or there when it was starting. So you're
Definitely.
like an OG in the crypto space. You can
Yes.
consider that. And I was looking at the stats for the Cardano effect. So I have them right in front of me. 97.8% viewers of this channel are male, and
Crazy.
2.2% viewers are female. And there's this hypothesis out there that girls cannot be as good as boys in math. I remember when my sister was in second grade, she came up to me and said there was a little boy in class that said, girls can't do math, even though she was outscoring everyone in her class. And right now she's really high in math. And because she's had a solid foundation and
Yeah.
solid support, she hasn't been dissuaded. But a lot of girls at Earth comes to like a blockchain industry. So
Yeah.
how can we bridge that gap? Why is it 98.2%? Why is this such a male
Yeah.
dominated industry? And what can we do to bring more girls at early ages into the space, and then they grow up and then they create the next big DApp or they create the next big Cardano?
Well, that is the question, right? That's the biggest question. How do you solve this? So it definitely happens. I mean, everything is solved at the individual level first. I always look at things individually, then unit level, and then systemically. So individually, I mean, parents really need to also grow up. Honestly, I think we need to educate parents a little bit more on teaching their children all skill sets, including opening that sort of concept to them. I mean, I know my parents too. They didn't really push. I was very good at math, but they didn't really push it on me. It was never like, oh, well, that's a great field to go in. Actually, now that I think of it, it wasn't really like that. So obviously, more women that are successful in any of these disciplines, speaking about it, talking about it, coming up more to the forefront, seeing that a little bit more. That's really going to help women. The problem is with women is that we don't have a lot of female leaders. I was just at Davos and I saw Marissa Myers walk by, and I honestly almost started to cry. It was like a little fan woman or fangirl moment. It's like, Marissa Myers, like that is somebody I can look up to. Like I do. I look up to Charles. I look up to a lot of these other men. But like when you see someone like Marissa Myers, you're like, wow, there she is, and she did it. Whether you think she's successful or not. I mean, come on, she was one of the first 5 people at Google, wasn't she? And so just seeing more women in these sort of leadership roles and seeing how cool it actually can be. And I think there was like 3 astronauts. Like I'm always posting stuff about women because I think when you see that more and the media covers it more, that's really, really, really going to help a lot of people. We need female role models, guys. Like we really do, even in politics, right? Like think about it. How many political leaders? Well, we do. We actually have more now, but how many political leaders can females really, really look up to? So that's definitely going to help a lot. Making it, I don't know about making it more gender friendly. So I was talking to a partner, a product manager today. So think about this. Like we actually want to create a product, a wallet, and knew she was actually a speaker. She's a wonderful girl, woman. See, we also need to stop calling women girls when we're women. So a wonderful woman, and she had this beautiful design for a wallet, and it was catered to females. Like it had the beautiful colors, and it was called Chic. It is called Chic, and and it had like a little store in it where women could buy like women things. And I just thought like, that's really cool. Like that is actually catered to me. And then we're actually talking about putting an all female team, like a female product manager, female developers and everything to actually develop out that product. So maybe, once, even in science fairs and stuff, if women or in that case, girls can start working on projects that maybe speak to women a little bit more, they'll be able to see what effect it actually can have. They need sort of that hands-on feel, see, hear, touch. So like a little crypto wallet and I think NU actually has something for kids too, like teaching kids blockchain. Having it in their hands to see, hold, and feel, and being like, wow, I can create that with math or science, or I can be an engineer. Like that's, or I can create technology. That's amazing. That's what they need to know and hear. We just need more stories like that. And guys, trust me, I know the other side of the equation. I've never thought of myself as a woman. I really haven't. Like, I get it. I'm a woman. Of course, I think of myself as a woman. I look at myself every day. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're for sure a woman. But I never like go to any job that I have, and I'm not thinking the whole time like, oh wow, I'm a woman. This is crazy. Like, we just don't think about that. But like, then there's that whole feminist, people like me don't think about that. But then there's this whole feminist movement that men just seem to hate. They're like, wow, those guys are they're crazy. They feel like they've taken it to an extreme. I think we need to take it somewhere in the middle, right? And just sort of like, yeah, definitely look at helping women a little bit more and focusing a little bit more on woman issues and giving us more opportunity. But at the same time, also maybe highlighting the complementary aspects too, right? It's not just one thing. It's not just women. It's women and men working together and supporting each other. And this is where I would also be aware of it and also be like thinking about like, okay, how, this woman is in a meeting with all dudes, all men. How can I help her, maybe get her voice heard a little bit more? How can I help make sure that she has the same access to knowledge as I do? A lot of the times men go into the back corners of the world wherever they do business, and that's where business is done a lot of times still, guys.
On the
That's
golf course.
and I play golf. So that's like one thing. This is one thing I'm like, I'm going to learn golf. No, that's not why I learned golf. I learned golf because I used to play hockey actually. And it was a natural transition. But they absolutely do it on the golf course. So yeah, I was saying to these wonderful women I met in Davos, most of them lawyers, like what should we do like for extracurriculars? Like I'm starting a cigar club actually in Zurich for the females. But like we should have our own little groups too. Women need to support other women. And again, I gotta say, I'm so honest, guys. I used to find those things really annoying. It's like, it's like another female fest. And like, I used to be invited to like women in blockchain. And I was actually voted top 100 women in blockchain. I'm like, who cares that I'm a woman, guys? I just got here. I'm just me, sort of like what the new prime minister of Finland said, right? She's like, well, I never really thought about my gender. When she said that, I was like, yeah, totally me too. So that's why I was always #me too. That's why I was always a little bit, reticent to join these all female things. But now it's like, no. We really need to share our stories. Us other women, we need to have more support around that. Women need to band together. And I think it's BS that women can't work with each other too. There's like discussions about we're catty and we're this and we're that. I mean, people just need to grow up in general. So I think women just need to get past whatever hangups they have. I mean, once you get past telling each other, oh, I love your coat. I love your shoes. I love your jacket. Because that's what women do when we meet each other. We're like, oh, I just love your hair. But once we get past that, we really can do, and we do amazing stuff together. And guys, it's an uptick. I see it happening. We're getting there. I know so many great women in this space as well. Even in early days, there were women around. There were a lot of women around. And I never was like, well, this isn't predominantly men. But I think we're getting there. But I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question. I don't think I solved it in my diatribe there. But there's certainly, I think I touched on a few things that might help. And then training women like we do directly in Ethiopia. I mean, that's like, come on, like how better to do that? You actually, Charles was saying, I think 90% of the developers in Ethiopia are men. And we had 300 applicants for the women developers. And that's like, it's like having programs like that focus on women is also incredibly helpful. And then women who code, that's another thing that they're doing in Toronto and other places. So yeah, maybe that would, yeah, that's.
Yeah. Well, I would like to circle back to where you started with parenting and other people being involved. And because I have 2 daughters.
Okay.
And we were getting ready for the podcast. I was talking with Rod Alexander.
Yeah.
And I was telling him a story, and he thought it was kind of interesting, but I did not see the vacuum of women in STEM. I was like, yeah, I didn't know women in STEM was really that big of a deal because of 2 things. I have 2 daughters who are both scientists, and they grew up around science. I grew up around science. So your point about parenting is a great point, but it wasn't me. It was like we would just go to the science stuff together. And so now one of my daughters is a biochemical engineer. She's working on a biomedical engineering degree now for her master's. And my other daughter's a medical researcher. And I was telling Rod
Awesome.
about it, and I said, my and I've got coworkers. So I've got ladies in my life. There's ladies in my life who are scientists, and I have coworkers who are software engineers, managers in leadership positions. So our lab manager where I work is not lab manager, but the agile process manager. The agile process manager is a lady, Michelle, there, and she kind of runs that whole show. And then my chief architect for the stuff that I work on, she's a chief architect. She's also a lady. and probably the most brilliant software engineer I've ever met. And
Yeah.
it's funny you made that damsel in distress thing. I was over here. I was about 4 miles away from here, and she side of the house, and
Right.
she goes, "Yeah, I come over, take a look at it." And she's fixing it. So she's over there at like 8 o'clock at night, just banging away on the code. And she goes, "Oh, I know what that is." Da, 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 da. She goes, "Okay, check it and make sure it works." And then poof, it worked. I was like,
Yeah.
"Holy cow!" So every night she come over there for like 3 or 4 nights in a row, 2 or 3 hours a night after she was done with her day job down the street. And she was fixing it right on site, not fixing, but making the
Yeah.
adjustment. She was, and it like bam, bam, bam. I was like, "Holy cow!" That's why she's the chief architect.
Exactly.
Smartest software engineer I've ever met in my life.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I mean, they always say like women think holistically, or and then men think linearly. But actually, we both can do both. And if you dedicate yourself enough to, there's always that argument too. Like she might have had to like even work harder to prove herself. That's not even the case. If she's good at what she does, if she learns it, anybody, and you innately know what you're doing, you're just good at it. I always knew I'd be an amazing audio engineer if I actually stuck with it. The person that trained me, if I had like a signal path, sort of like what we experienced before we started, he wouldn't help me at all. He's like, figure it out your damn self. If it takes you all day, figure it out. And you got to, women can't be given also a leg like some sort of training wheels either. I mean, this person specifically, he wasn't like handling me with kit gloves because I was a woman. He's like, well, screw you. I don't care if you're a woman or a man. Like, figure it out. I'm not going to give you help just because you bat your eyelashes at me. And I'm sure I tried. I'm sure I was like, hey, can you fix this for me? He's like, no. And same with her. I mean, like, I mean, guys, like our product manager, Aparna, right? She is obviously clearly a woman and so incredibly competent and capable. And, her delivery is good. She's a great leader. She's also an engineer. I mean, I just find it funny that we're even talking about this, to be honest, because it's just so strange. It's like, of course, that woman that you just described came over and helped you out. I used to be the only female in my audio engineering class too. And I got to say, I was probably one of the best. I'm not trying to be arrogant. Somebody on the other podcast was like, wow, she's really full of herself. And I was like, well, no, I just had to work incredibly hard to get good at my craft. But there is one other thing, though. There's the woman thing with the children thing. And this is a thing. We want to have children, too. We're still have those maternal instincts. And this is where my real political side, I'm very intrigued by it. I have a lot of girlfriends from girlfriends with children that are also career women, and that's the thing. The infrastructure also has to be in place, guys, to help us be able to actually still go and have a career. I mean, childcare, and I sound like a politician right now, but childcare is an issue. If we don't have proper childcare, if that's not available to us, I mean, my poor girlfriend, she's a teacher. She couldn't even get childcare for her kids because of the lack of childcare in where we're from, my hometown. And so that needs help. We need help there. We need that sort of support. And again, I'm not saying anything new, but we need that sort of support that says, okay, you can still have a career, and we're going to help you with that. Or we're going to make sure that infrastructure is there for you. I'm not talking about government handouts or anything, but I'm kind of in the middle. I'm a centrist in many ways. I'm not saying we subsidize everything, but we certainly need to make sure that women have the infrastructure to actually have the focus and be able to carry on the career.
Yeah, and from experience, you have kids, right?
No, I don't have kids, and I
Okay.
would not know how to have. Like, I'd have no. I know how, but I would have no time to have children right now. That's the thing. That's why I work 7 days a week, pretty much, right? So,
Yeah.
think about that though. If I actually brought children into this world, which I cannot wait to do, I mean, I really would have to roll back my hours, right? So it's just
Yeah.
a thing. It's a fact of life, guys. Like what am I going to say? Like, it is what it is. And, mother's guilt too. It's not like I can't keep working these hours. That's why I'm taking advantage of working these hours while I can. And then when I do have children, it would have to be a little bit less. I also want to homeschool my children. I'm not a big fan of the system, to be honest. I think it's not so great. But I haven't found anything that I would love to send my children to. But again, I don't have children, so I haven't researched it too deeply. So that's another thing if you want to homeschool your children as well.
Yeah, that adds to
Yeah,
workload of kids,
just a
the
bit.
wonder of kids.
The,
It's a
the wonder
lot.
of children. Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So,
So
dude, go ahead,
go ahead.
Philippe.
For all the listeners and the viewers of the Cardano Effect podcast, tomorrow
Mhm.
is integral in building the Cardano project, and in the sense that I always compare it to I watch basketball, and if you know about basketball, you there's a position on every basketball team called the GM, and the GM chooses all the draft picks for a basketball team. And I am a Miami Heat fan, and one of the most famous GMs is Pat Riley. He's infamous. He brought LeBron over from Cleveland back in the day. He organized the Big Three, so he built a super team. And it's analogous to what you're doing with Cardano. Although we have Charles doing his AMAs, he sold a lot of people with that whiteboard video back in the day.
Yeah.
He's a master orator, and he knows how to speak to people. He's very intelligent, but at the same time, someone else built that super team, and that person was you. So how did you go from barely any employees to over 200? And what was the thought process? How'd you build your super team? Can you take us through that?
Sure. Yeah, it was obviously a long and arduous process. Yeah, so I was there when there was 20 people. So I really had to find a good team under me. It's obviously not just me. You have to first make sure that you know what role you're hiring for and how it fits in the rest of the organization. I think that's the part that we maybe struggled with a little bit at the beginning. Now it's like, hindsight's 2020, but it's like crystal clear. Okay, we need to hire these people, and then this, so I think we did it a bit backwards in some ways. So I was sort of working with what we thought that we needed at the time and sort of piecing that together. So that's one thing. Now it's just so much easier. That's why I can help the CF, because you just need to know, the other person needs to know as well, what is expected of them and how they fit into the rest of the organization. So yeah, the first thing you need is great recruiters. Guys, I'm not a recruiter. I don't go onto LinkedIn or, and scouting out people. I mean, I can't operate at that level. I'm a higher level thinker. I can't do that stuff like that rolling up my sleeves and finding people. So you need to rely on the most important people in your organization. I truly mean it, aside from all of our developers, of course, and all of us, actually. We're all equally important. But my recruiters, man, these guys are incredible. They are very, very, very good. So you need a good recruiter that's hungry, that's aligned to that you need to inform your recruiters. They're not just recruiters, right? You need to inform them of your entire commercial strategy and what you're you have to bring them into the process. And I profile candidates. I'm very crazy. I'm very pedantic woman. I profile the candidates very, very clearly and closely before we go to market. So at the beginning, it was a bit, shaky still, but that includes like salary ranges. You don't want to get into a situation where you're hiring somebody at the end of it and they're like, oh, well, I just want 400,000. And you're like, oh my God, I just put you through 3 interviews and you're not getting 400,000 per annum. I'm sorry. So making sure that you have very clear parameters for your recruiters and your interview teams is really key. So yeah, I would say a lot of the legwork beforehand, planning, guys, planning. You got to plan this. You got to know exactly what you're wanting. You got to keep going, hammering on those job specs and making sure that the hiring manager knows what they're doing and hiring for. And then it's just a matter of interviews. It's a matter of finding the right candidates. You get bar setting candidates. So there's a tendency to just like, oh my God, that person's amazing. And it's like, especially when you're in a rush, right? When you're in a rush to hire somebody, there's a tendency to be like, yes, let's just go with him. But you have to learn to pull back a little bit, pump the brakes and be like, okay, this candidate was really good, but let's see what else is out there. So unfortunately, time's not always on our side. But yeah, you have to just be careful when it comes to planning, and you just need to know people. We have a whole suite of questions that we ask people through the entire interview process to make sure we're profiling a bunch of different things. For us guys, it's not just about skills. Do you have the skills? It really isn't just about this. I value so much, is this person a cultural fit? Does this person actually, so then you don't have to train them about your culture. They just are your culture already. They embody all those things that you just naturally are, right? Like